Welcome back to my Git and GitHub for Beginners tutorial series. In this video, I'll share with you a few basic Git commands that you should know to get started. To follow along in this video, there are some prerequisites that you should know. Since I will be sharing some basic Git commands, you need access to a terminal and also some basic knowledge on some terminal commands. If you don't have prior knowledge, I'll quickly explain what these commands are. Also, a text editor, ideally VS Code, will be preferable. I'll add the links to where you can download these in the video description below. Okay, let's get right into it. First, let's make sure you have Git running into your machines. If you're a Mac or Linux user, chances are you probably already have Git installed. But if you haven't got it installed, head over to this link and you can download Git accordingly, depending on the operating system that you're using. Once it's downloaded, open your terminal and type git -- version. This should print out the version that you have downloaded. Now that you have Git installed, we need to customize it a bit. Configuring Git should only be done once, as the configuration will be preserved in all of your repositories going forward. The first thing that you would want to customize is your name, and you can achieve that by typing in git config -- global to specify that this is a global change, followed by user.name and then your name. I'm adding a quote here since there is a space in my name, but if you're only going to add your first name, quotes are not needed. To check that this has been set correctly, you can type git config user.name. The next thing that I'll customize is my email address. It's the same command, git config -- global, but setting user.email instead. The main reason why we need to set our name and email is because Git will use this info to identify who has made the commits in a repo. The final configuration that I would like to make is to update the name of our default branch. By default, this is set to master and it has been master for quite a long time. However, you can now change this name. There has been a lot of discussions out there to change this terminology to make sure that the tech industry is inclusive, and removing the master-slave terminology was an important step. So I've written git config -- global followed by init.default branch and then the word main. I'm saying that I want my default branch to be called main and I want this change for all of my repos. If I now type git config -- list, this should then print all the configurations that I have set. There's other configuration that you can also set up, but these are the basic ones that you should know. Now that we have finished our Git setup, let's initialize a brand new repo locally. If you remember from my first video, I talked about the .git folder and how it's able to track our changes over time. What I would like to do now is to show you how you can create a new project using some basic terminal commands and then initialize Git. The first thing that I'll do is create a brand new directory. To do that, I will type mkdir, which is a command for creating a new directory. I'll give it a name of my cool project in between quotes. Next, let's go to that directory by typing in cd. CD stands for change directory. Within that, let's create another directory for images. Then I'm going to create a few empty files by using the touch command. To initialize Git in this project, let's use the git init command. Init is short for initialize. Once that's run, you should see that an empty Git repo has been initialized and that by default, you are now in the main branch. Now that we have an empty Git repo, let's go ahead and make some changes in our project. When we make a change, that change goes through a life cycle. The first state is untracked. Let's say I've made a change to one of these files. I can see that the change is there locally, but Git has no idea about this change because it hasn't been recorded in previous snapshots or commits. As a result, any further changes that I make, the file's history will not be preserved. Now, in order for Git to start tracking changes in your file, you need to add it to your staging area. Once you add a file to the staging area, Git will now start tracking all the changes. It's now a track file. A track file can either have stage or unstaged changes. Stage means that this is now ready to be committed, while unstaged means that if I make any more changes to a track file, then that is unstaged, which means that I need to add the changes to the staging area again. It might still be a bit confusing, so let's look at an example to make this easier to understand. If you remember, I added 3 files to my project before initializing Git. When I run git status, which is a handy command to check the status of your files and changes. The files are in an untracked state. If I want Git to start tracking the changes in any of these files, I need to add them to the staging area. To do that, let's use git add followed by a dot. Adding the dot simply means to add all the files. Now, if I run git status again, the changes are now tracked and it's ready to be committed. At this point, these are our stage changes. But let's say I made a mistake. I accidentally added the wrong file extension here. So rather than test.js, I actually put test-js. Now, let me update the file by using the mv command. mv stands for move. Now, when I run git status again, I can see that I have an unstaged change and an untracked file. Why is that? So, test-js was previously staged, and because I renamed that file to something else, the new change need to be staged again. Git is also telling us that there is an untracked file because essentially test.js is a new file that Git wasn't aware of previously. If you're not sure which state your file is, just use git status command as frequently as you like. Now the fun part, let's start committing changes to Git. When we commit our changes to Git, it gets recorded in the Git history, so it's a good practice to write sensible commit messages. Git will never remove these changes unless you explicitly ask Git to do it. The git commit will be one of your most used command alongside git add. To start committing these changes, let's add the unstaged and untracked files to the staging area again. Then to commit, I'll use git commit -m, which stands for message, followed by my commit message. Since this is my first commit, I will put my commit message as initial commit, which is a standard practice. Now, if I run git status again, it will say that I don't have any changes to commit. Let's go ahead and make another change. I've opened my project in VS Code and I'm just going to add some initial HTML structure. When you're using VS Code, notice that there is also an icon here to see our Git changes. If I go ahead and click this file, Git has tracked the new changes. Running Git status also tells me that these are unstaged changes rather than untracked, since Git is aware of these files already. I love shortcuts, and a shortcut that you can use if you want to add and commit the change at the same time is to use git commit -a, which stands for add, and then followed by -m and then the commit message. By now, you should have 2 commits in your history. Let's have a look at how we can view the history log. Viewing the log is done by running git log. As you can see, the name and email address has been taken from our git config that we have set up previously. You can also see the commit message itself, timestamp, and commit hash number. By default, the commits are sorted in reverse order where the most recent commits show up first. To exit the git log history, just press Q from your keyboard. There's a lot of options that you can pause to git log, but the most basic option is one line. With one line, the logs are displayed as one-liner and the commit hash is also shortened to simplify the logs a bit. Now, one thing that I haven't covered as part of this video is explaining what head is. You might have noticed the word head when viewing the commits as part of your git log, so in my next video, I'll do a quick explanation as to what this is. So far, we've been working with projects locally, but most of the time, when you join a team, you'll most likely be cloning an existing repo. Imagine that there is a public repo from GitHub that you are trying to clone. To do that, just click the code button and you are presented with various options on how to clone the repo. For now, let's select clone by HTTPS. Just simply copy the Git URL. Let's go back to our terminal. And I'll just create a sample directory here and go to that directory. In that directory, let's type git clone followed by the git repo URL. When I type ls, it should list the name of the GitHub repo. ls is a terminal command to list directory or files in a given directory. If you're on Windows, this will be dir. Now it's time to work with branches. Branches are a very core concept when it comes to working with code and collaborating with software teams. When you want to introduce a new feature or write an automated test, you create a new branch to represent these changes. This ensures that the main branch only have changes that are stable and approved by the team. Working in branches also allows a team to work in parallel. There's a few commands that you should know when it comes to Git branches. There's git branch, git checkout, and git switch. Let's have a look at how you can use these commands. If I want to create a new branch and switch to that branch, I can use git checkout -b, which stands for branch, followed by the name of my branch. If I want to switch to an existing branch, I just need to remove the -b option. Another way to create a new branch is by using git switch. Git switch was introduced to make it easier to remember how to create and switch branches. This is because git checkout also has other responsibilities which I won't cover as of yet in this video. So to switch to a new branch, I've used git switch -c or create followed by the name of our branch. To switch back to a previous branch, you can use git switch followed by -. You can also specify, of course, the branch name that you want to switch. Now, the last command that I want to show you is git branch. Git branch will list you all the local branches that you have created. The branch name with the asterisk means that this is the active branch at the moment. To exit this, again, just type the letter Q from your keyboard. And there you have it. These are the 10 most useful Git commands for beginners in my opinion. The good thing about these commands is they are quite self-explanatory, so once you practice these commands, they'll be a regular part of your workflow. That takes me to the end of this video, so thank you for watching and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy content like this.